Top 3 builds that were buffed this season. Yay. Right, firstly, I kind of feel like I need to maybe tone back the whole video spam thing a bit. I'm clearly not resting properly and my hip is giving me, after surgery, just so many damn issues. So I'm going to try and keep it to one a day. I've had a good few days rest over the weekend, so hopefully we can go back into it. But at a more steady and even pace rather than me just being video spam, farm those views. Right, so top 3 builds that have been buffed this season. I wanted to stay away from the standard strikers, which has seen, maybe not strikers directly, but there's been a few weapon changes that have made strikers a bit more powerful in certain areas. Heartbreaker, obviously. I kind of wanted to stay away from the real meta sort of settings. I kind of wanted to go for more unusual builds that potentially people haven't tried in God knows how long or haven't felt the need to try. So one of these builds is what you can see on screen now. My arms are flapping about all over the place. I've punched the mic twice and the headset once. So we're off to an absolutely amazing start. But this is the Hardwire Seeker build, which is back to its pre-season or gear 2.0 of essentially what is the 5-second Seekers, which basically means every 5 seconds you can throw out more Seekers. Now, annoyingly in solo, which for some genius reason I decided to do, this build is terrible. It really is. Enemies have spent way too long playing Dark Souls and they're able to just magically roll out of the way of everything. And you end up relying way too much on your weapon. Because it's a 6 yellow build, you don't really do that much damage. It's heavily reliant on Seekers. So this is the sort of build that you would use quite heavily in something like Countdown or within a high-profile group setting. Now this build's pretty simple to make. You want 4-piece hardwired and then the Night Watcher mask, a China Light chest. The go-to talent here is going to be Glass Cannon, which for people being oh, it's always Glass Cannon, you can actually make perfect use of here because you're never out of cover. You can literally just press Scanner Pulse, Seekers, Scanner Pulse, Seekers, Scanner Pulse. You don't have to fire if you don't want. The go-to specialization is Demolitionist for the 10% explosive damage, combining hardwired set with its total skill damage buff every time you activate a skill. The Night Watcher giving 100% Scanner Pulse haste with the skill haste from the actual set as well. Yeah, the end result is literally you can throw Seekers out every 5 seconds. It is pretty damn powerful, mostly in a group setting. Though, like I said, this really does start to struggle in solo play, so just be wary of that. As for the mods, most people go for skill haste because there's not really much else you can put there. You can go for armor on kill, protection from elites. There's a variety of things you can put here, but mostly skill haste is kind of the go-to, simply because the lower you can get the cooldown on the pulse, the higher the uptime of Seekers, essentially, realistically. The triple tick build. Now, this build actively hasn't changed since its inception or discovery or whatever you'd want to call it within the Division 2 player base. However, due to the rather hefty buff to Pestilence, this has become a mainstay in a lot of people's loadouts. And if you haven't tried it, now is kind of the perfect time. It's a rather simple build that makes use of essentially dots, damage over time. Very good sources of this are obviously Ongoing Directive, the Vile Mask, as well as Pestilence, hence why we call it the triple tick build. Plague of the Outcast, Bleed, as well as then when applying a status through the Bleed, activates Vile, so we can get 3 sets of ticks. Triple tick. Duh. Now the overall build composition is pretty simple. We're going to use Vile, 4-piece Ongoing Directive, and I've put a China Light chest in. However, the main thing you're going to want is Glass Cannon, and the reason you want Glass Cannon over the Ongoing Directive chest is because Glass Cannon is going to affect your bleed as well as Vile, whereas the Ongoing Directive chest doesn't. It is a massive damage drop-off if you run the Ongoing Directive chest in this scenario. All rolls are going to be towards weapon damage. Obviously, there's nothing you can do about Vial, and then the minor attributes being status effect. What you want to do with those extra mod slots or rolls are entirely up to you, as well as what specialization you'd like to run. You can run Gunner here for some armor on kill or the increase in fire rate. I personally mostly use this in group scenarios, so I like to run Survivalist for the amplified damage to enemies that are affected by a status effect. It also gives me the Fireball Grenade, which is another area where I'm able to activate a status. Obviously as well, this will give me Sledgehammer because I will be running either stage left or lefty. Though we also do have some variability with the chest. Some people like to run Perfect Glass Cannon for more damage. Some people like to run Palisade with Gunner for now 20% armor on kill. For the extra rolls, it's going to be entirely up to you as to what you would like. How I personally run it is a bit weird, which you can see on screen now. Having PFE, probably not really required. I'm probably just being a bit silly here, but it does pair well with Survivalist. I then have incoming repairs, and I utilise the Healer Chem just to help keep myself alive. And then 2 rolls of repair skill on my China Light chest with Glass Cannon, just so that I can also act as a little bit of a pseudo healer for my clanmates or teammates or whatever. Now when it comes to specialization, you do actually have a lot of options here. The only 2 that don't really fit are Sharpshooter and Firewall. The reason those 2 don't fit is because they don't really give you anything. Demolitionist increases explosive damage, which affects Vial ticks, so you can get more damage out of Vial that way. And obviously if you're playing this in a group setting, giving your team an extra 5% damage to targets out of cover is nice. Gunner, obviously, for ammunition as well as 10% armor on kill. Survivalist for the chems, if you so wish to go down that route. If not, protection from elites, as well as giving you fire grenades, which are a great source to proc ongoing directive, as well as Sledgehammer. But again, if you're playing in a group, another 10% amplified damage to enemies that are affected by a status. Technician can also be worthwhile, particularly when it comes to just essentially giving you another skill tier, simply because one of your skills I do recommend being something that can apply a status to an enemy. You might notice I have the Jammer Pulse, and it's the Jammer Pulse that I initially use to start an engagement, as that apply disrupt on the enemies, proccing Vial. Killing them will then give me the ongoing directive bullets. There we are. We now are able to immediately get our bleed and our Vial ticks, and then constantly shooting them will obviously apply the Plague of the Outcast from Pestilence. The reason this build works so well is because it is actually, especially over an area, surprisingly very, very high DPS. It's actively, if you're proactive with it, it's actively able to keep up with a Striker's build. It's seriously damaging. Now, when it comes to the Pestilence, the best in slot attribute here is actually Rate of Fire. You can get away with damage to armor if you wish. It is kind of worthwhile, but you will also really, really, really struggle against Chungers, which is another reason why I like Survivalist, because I can swap to crossbow and just break the Chungers and then just pound them with Pestilence and hopefully get the bullet damage and the ticks through. Also, having Rate of Fire means I can get a little bit more of my pesty stacks on the enemies as and when I need it, simply because obviously running an LMG does bring you out of cover quite a lot of the time. Rifle builds. Now, annoyingly, there's so much to actually go over here, so I'm just going to try my best to keep it simple, and the build I will show will just be the one that I'm running in the footage. There are a plethora of ways you can go around building rifles at the moment, so experiment, play around, bloody. That being said, going for 3-piece Weir isn't actually best in slot, simply just because the M1A, classic M1A, is still like the top tier rifle, and that was perfectly fine and usable with 3-piece Providence, Contractors, Foxes, and then Cody's Mask or a Grupo piece or Cheska piece, blah. This is still the best in slot rifle build. Effectively, they haven't really been buffed in the sense of they are doing better in terms of damage. Effectively, rifles are kind of in DPS wise one of the worst places they've actually ever been. However, that being said, they've buffed in the sense of how they perform and handle and feel, essentially, which no longer means that when we use a rifle, we're locked into purely using the M1A series. We can now play around with other rifles and see how they perform. And if you're going to go down that route, Zwea is the best, but you're losing about 10% damage. That being said, just to reiterate, rifles are in no way, shape or form meta, but they are a new shiny thing that we all get to play around with, because I feel like even though we've looked at rifles for God knows how long and potentially picked one up on occasion, 5 minutes later we've all put them down going, nah, this feels horrible. Now they don't. Now for the build that I'm running in the footage, we have 3-piece Zwea as well as the Eagle's Grasp for the other extra 15% weapon handling, Fox's Prayer, a Cheska piece, and then Coyote's Mask. Everything is basically rolled to crit. I'm utilising Glass Cannon, and I've put Vigilance in the builder, but I'm actually running Unstoppable Force in the footage. Lately, I've actually been preferring Unstoppable Force. Overall, this build is performing perfectly fine. It's good for solo content, and you can get through things pretty damn easily. So overall, yeah, rifle builds are actually feeling a little bit spicy at the moment. They are performing very well. They're not quite up there with like the top tier, maybe like B plus, A minus kind of area, but they are still performing very well and have been quite refreshing as to what we would actually want or need within the game at the moment. So yeah, there we have it. My top 3 builds have been buffed in TU22. Have fun. Good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.